Last night's episode of Monday Night Raw featured a few noteworthy developments, including a tense face-off between Undisputed Champion Cody Rhodes and World Heavyweight Champion Gunther ahead of their clash at Crown Jewel next month, as well as the complete implosion of what was left of the Miz's and R-Truth's friendship, but arguably the biggest talking point coming out of Raw this week would have to be Jimmy Uso attempting to speak and reconcile with his brother, the current Intercontinental Champion main event Jey Uso, who swiftly shot down any of Jimmy's attempts to talk with him behind the scenes at Raw last night. Now, it's really not surprising that Jey Uso had the reaction he had when confronted by Jimmy Uso, as he really wouldn't know what to make of it. The Usos have had a very tense rivalry this year in 2024 leading up to WrestleMania 40, and while Jey ultimately won that battle against Jimmy at the Showcase of the Immortals, no doubt the betrayal from Jimmy Uso and the months of torment are still very fresh on the back of Jey Uso's mind, and he clearly wanted nothing to do with his brother. On Friday Night SmackDown last week, although things seemed to be pretty good between the OTC Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso, with Roman showing a lot of appreciation for Jimmy after his big return and actions taken at Bad Blood, but things quickly got tense between Roman and Jimmy after Roman began talking about the Bloodline and how Roman's not happy with where it is today, with Jimmy Uso essentially telling Roman Reigns that he's a chief with no tribe, as there's only two of them to go up against, the new Bloodline led by Solo. Jimmy Uso made it clear that they need help, and that Jimmy knows of someone who could help, with fans quickly chanting Yeet, which obviously is Jey Uso's signature catchphrase, but Roman Reigns immediately shot Jimmy's suggestion down, saying no Yeet, and according to a breaking new backstage rumor, the OTC Roman Reigns was absolutely furious after watching what Jimmy Uso attempted to do last night on Raw by attempting to speak with and reunite with Jey Uso, with one of our insider sources revealing some massive details regarding Roman's backstage reaction to what Jimmy Uso did on Raw last night, by reaching out to Jey Uso when Roman specifically said no to this idea, quote, "So last night on Monday Night Raw, Jimmy Uso sought out his brother Jey, as Jimmy knows the problem he and Roman Reigns are faced with on SmackDown when it comes to the new Bloodline run by Solo Sikoa, and this was obviously a big no-no with Roman Reigns. On SmackDown last Friday, Roman Reigns immediately shot down Jimmy's suggestion of who could help them in the fight against the new Bloodline, that being his brother main event Jey Uso, of course, with fans chanting Yeet as soon as Jimmy alluded to someone who could help, and with a fierce look in his eyes, the OTC wasted no time by refuting the suggestion with no Yeet, something that upset a lot of wrestling fans who know full well that Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso are outnumbered and outgunned, with the new Bloodline consisting of Solo, Jacob Fatu, Tama Tonga, and Tonga Loa. Jimmy Uso clearly didn't like Roman's response to his suggestion, so on Monday Night Raw this week in Indiana, Jimmy Uso flew out to the show to confront his brother Jey, who he's clearly had massive issues with these past months, but is willing to put his difference with Jey aside for the greater good, because again, Jimmy knows what he's up against with the new Bloodline, and is fully aware of the reality that he can't take down the Bloodline and get revenge against his brother Solo without Jey's help. And unfortunately for Jimmy Uso, his decision to be defiant to his Tribal Chief Roman Reigns backfired massively in two ways. First off, Jey Uso was unwilling to sit down and talk with Jimmy, despite multiple attempts, with Jey essentially telling Jimmy to back off and leave him alone, so Jimmy's efforts on Raw last night were completely fruitless. And the second thing going against Jimmy Uso is the fact that he went directly against the orders of Roman Reigns. Jimmy and Roman have just started to get back on the same page following Bad Blood. And already, Jimmy Uso has done something to infuriate the man he acknowledges as his tribal chief. We have been told that after SmackDown went off the air this week, Roman Reigns confronted Jimmy Uso behind the scenes and sat down with Jimmy for a talk, because Roman Reigns was fully aware that Jimmy didn't like that his idea of trying to get Jey Uso to come back to the Bloodline was shot down by him, and Roman essentially laid out all the reasons to Jimmy regarding why he doesn't want Jey Uso back in the Bloodline, and that it would be going against a direct order from the OTC himself for Jimmy to continue with this notion of reuniting with Jey Uso, with Roman making it clear that he has a vision and a plan to get revenge against the new Bloodline without Jey Uso. One insider source we talked to said that Jimmy Uso basically agreed with Roman Reigns and made a promise to Roman that he would drop it when it comes to reuniting with Jey, or trying to make that happen somehow, and just 3 days later, Jimmy Uso broke the promise he made with Roman Reigns at SmackDown last week, and as you would expect, the OTC is absolutely furious and enraged, and it wouldn't have made a difference to Roman if Jey Uso agreed to talk with Jimmy or not. Jimmy Uso went against his orders and Roman's not happy about it. We have been told that Roman Reigns was watching Monday Night Raw this week from his home in Florida because of the fact that a bunch of SmackDown stars were being featured on the show, obviously the biggest one being the Undisputed champion Cody Rhodes, who Reigns clearly has a vested interest in, and when Roman Reigns saw Jimmy Uso backstage at Raw on his television, the OTC flipped out and lost his cool because he knew exactly what Jimmy was about to do before he even got face to face with his brother, Jey Uso. Roman was under the notion that Jimmy Uso flew home after their talk last week on SmackDown and was completely flabbergasted to see Jimmy Uso appearing on Monday Night Raw to confront and try to sort things out with Jey Uso. We have heard that Roman Reigns almost laughed at the boldness shown by Jimmy Uso after how clear Roman Reigns tried to make it with Jimmy Uso backstage at SmackDown last week that they wouldn't be reuniting with main event Jey or making any attempts to get him back into the fold, and the overall sentiment is that Jimmy Uso has basically once again gotten himself into serious hot water with Reigns, and no doubt Jimmy's going to be paying big time for trying to get back with Jey Uso when Roman Reigns specifically said not to do that. On top of that, Reigns feels embarrassed considering Jey Uso, the guy Roman wanted no part of in the first place, shot down Jimmy Uso's reconciliation, so Roman feels Jimmy made a fool of himself on Raw last night and plans to put him in his place this coming week on SmackDown. Jimmy Uso has made a big mistake by trying to seek out the assistance of Jey Uso on Raw this week, because little did he know the OTC was watching the show live and witnessed the entire embarrassing moment, and Roman will certainly have some choice words for Jimmy Uso when he sees him next, which again will be on SmackDown this coming week. So guys, it's clear that Roman Reigns wasn't happy whatsoever with Jimmy Uso reaching out to his brother Jey this week on Raw, and do you guys share Roman's sentiments that he, along with Jimmy Uso, don't need Jey back in the Bloodline to take down the new Bloodline led by Solo, or do you feel like Roman's animosity or bad feelings with Jey is clouding his better judgment, and that Jimmy Uso is actually in the right here to be seeking out the help of main event Jey Uso? As well, would you guys be excited to see Jey Uso reunite with Roman Reigns and Jimmy Uso, with that clearly being the direction WWE are heading in, or do you feel like regardless of Roman Reigns' view on Jey, that Jey is better off as a singles or solo competitor on Monday Night Raw, where he has already achieved some big things like the Intercontinental Championship? Let us know. Well guys, that's it for today's major wrestling news. Make sure you leave a like and comment, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel with notifications turned on so you'll never miss out on an episode. Finally, if you haven't already, give us a follow on Twitter at TSE Wrestling, and we will see you guys in the next video.